Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another HM1 in 2021. Today we're looking at the Chapter 1, because if you look at your bib, we're only reading Chapter 1. Joint Publication 4-02, which is the Joint Health Services. And if you look at your thing, it's only Chapter 1, which is basically just an overview. I thought it was kind of interesting because this whole book is probably a lot of cool stuff for corpsmen to know, but in the bib it specifically says Chapter 1 is what we are studying, so that is what we shall study. Let me scroll down to Chapter 1. Primer, I think probably the most important thing about this is it talks about some TCCC stuff. It talks about the care under fire phases, what type of evacuation, stuff like that. I think that's probably the most important part about this, but I'm still going to go through it. But I think the last 2 pages of this reference are probably the most important. So it talks about preservation of health should be the commander's first and greatest care. I think that's a pretty cool quote to start this off. Right away, it starts just throwing acronyms at us left and right. So it talks about health service support under sustainment, and then force health protection under protection. Health support capabilities that encompass both of them are employed during all of military operations. OA is operational area. Talks about the mission of the military health system. It does what you would imagine. It takes care of people in the military. And it seems like this is mostly operationally focused. So what are some of the principles of joint health services? Make sure that you're conforming with the tactical plan. I mean, that makes the most sense. If there is a plan, that is what we should be keeping for our medical stuff. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So just stick with the plan. Let's see. Proximity at the right time, which I read this as make sure all of your corpsmen know TCCC, which was that initiative that the Navy did. Instead, I think it used to be before your operational, but now it's every 3 years. So that's part of it. Proximity right there is we're all trained in TCCC. Let's see. It says that the medical commander should build flexibility in the plan to support any combat commander scheme to maneuver. Let's see. The medical commander has command authority to effectively manage scarce medical resources so they can help out the most. Which makes a lot of sense. Whoever's in charge of medical should be the one saying what we're doing for medical resources, because that's really their wheelhouse. They're trained on what we need, how to do it. I thought this is important to note. The mobility and survivability, which it describes as armor plating of medical units, must be equal to the forces being supported. So if we're out there getting shot at and the medical vehicle isn't armored, you can see that wouldn't go very well. So it's basically saying keep the medical vehicles about as armored up as everything else. I think it's probably the most important there. Continuity care. I mean, I think everyone knows what continuity care is. Just making sure people are getting their care. Let's see. Talks about the Joint Force Surgeon. They're the one who establishes a relationship with theater medical treatment facility commanders and others who are in charge of any other medical forces. So since this is a joint publication, it's all about Navy medicine, Army medicine, Air Force medicine. How are they working together downrange? So then it talks about the 5 overarching joint medical capabilities. 1, first responder. And that's just, honestly, this is 3 paragraphs to say first responder. So the first medical capability for Joint Health Service, TCCC. And then it talks about the 3 different phases. Anyone that's taken TCCC recently, which is probably everyone watching this channel. Care under fire, that's where you put your tourniquet on and get the body off the X. Tactical field care, it's relative safety. That's where you start working down your P March P. Tactical evacuation is where you get the person out of there by any means possible. And that's where they can do more care because they're loading up. So again, the first one is all first responder. Just remember your tactical field care, your care under fire, and your CASEVAC. Let's see. So A, first responder. B, FRC, forward resuscitative care. And that is described basically that's kind of at the downrange MTF, which it describes as pharmacy, lab, radiology, some med management stuff. So a little bit more stuff. And again, that's all for FRC. Let's see, en route care. I think that is kind of common sense. It is the care someone is getting while they are en route. And then it says that it's normally transitory medical care. Each service component has their own vehicles that can be used to move people. And again, it talks about like the different ways of evacuation. So I think this is probably pretty important to know. So CASEVAC is getting the person out of there however you possibly can. So ships, land vehicle, aircraft. It's not necessarily medical stuff. It is we're getting this person out of there. MEDEVAC is anything in medical personnel. Efficient movement by medical personnel. So if medical is involved, it's a MEDEVAC. So medical evacuation. Let's see, and it says it's dedicated ground and air ambulances that are marked with the Geneva Convention. So that's the stuff with the painted white with the Red Cross on it. I like to think of the Mercy when I think of like MEDEVAC. Aeromedical Evacuation is movement of patients under medical supervision to and between MTFs by air trans. It does specify that the person or the company or organization that owns patient transport via the air is the United States Air Force. So note that when you're looking at that, the Air Force are the really ones that are in charge of like that air transportation between MTFs in theater, out of theater. So again, en route care, you got your CASEVAC, which is however possible, your MEDEVAC by medical personnel, and your Aerovac or your Aeromedical Evacuation, which is ran by the Air Force, and that's movement of patients under medical supervision between MTFs. Let's see. Theater hospitalization. Let's see, and that's basically the hospital downrange. Let's see, it talks about facilities and material to render significant preventive and curative health care. And it talks about how it has both inpatient, outpatient care, emergency care, medical, surgical capabilities. It varies according to the infrastructure. Talks about how you're going to have burn management, blood bank, medlog, optometry, pediatrics. So pretty much this is where all the specialties are. So whereas I think I described this one as like the hospital too. So forward resuscitative care, that's really meant for immediate life-saving stuff that may not happen during the initial TCCC phase. Whereas the theater hospitalization is kind of like that, is more of a hospital with a bunch of different specialties that can help out. And they're a little bit more focused on like long-term rehab as opposed to just keep you alive. Definitive care, that talks about MTFs in or outside the homeland. So that is like legit a hospital. And I think that's probably the best way to describe it. So again, what are the 5 different, the 5 medical joint capabilities? First responder, TCCC, remember your 3 phases. Forward resuscitative, so that's the immediate life-saving measures. En route care, which you should remember your CASEVAC, MEDEVAC, and Aeromedical Evacuation. Theater hospitalization, that's like your hospital down theater. Definitive care is outside of that. So that's basically like, let's say I'm in Okinawa and stuff's popping off down in China. I think Okinawa would probably be a definitive care capability because we're the biggest, nearest MTF, I think. I guess it depends. But so I think of like big hospital. Also talks about DHA. I think every corpsman that's stationed at Shore Command right now is aware of DHA and what they do. It's a combat support agency that enables Army, Navy, Air Force medical to provide medically resources, and it's kind of like selling you what they do. So DHA is all about integration, and I'm not going to waste too much time explaining that. If you're trying to be up for HM1, you have heard about DHA in one way, shape, or another. So again, that's it. Pretty simple, about 10 minutes or so. I think this is a really big repeat of information from TCCC. So if I was to guess, I would say this bib is probably where a lot of like those TCCC questions are going to come from in your exam. I hope this helped. Have a good night.